If you had asked me 6 months ago to describe my life in a sentence, I probably would have said something like, predictable but solid. That's what I believed. I was Evan Miller, 45 years old, lead engineer at a top tech company in Austin, happily married to Tessie for going on 12 years. I drove the same silver Toyota Tacoma I bought new in 2013. I had my routines, my favorite coffee mug, a golden retriever named Bruno, and a deep sense of security that I assumed meant everything was fine. Turns out I was just asleep at the wheel. Everything changed after Miles died. My cousin. My best friend growing up. The guy who dragged me into coding when we were 12 and forced me to learn Linux by threatening to brick my desktop. Miles had always been the bold one, the kind of person who bet big and didn't care what people thought. While I climbed the corporate ladder, he floated from startup to startup, sometimes broke, sometimes loaded, always unpredictable. We hadn't talked much in recent years. Not because of a falling out, just life. He'd been living out in Phoenix the last couple of years, working remotely and doing God knows what with crypto. When I got the call from his sister, I didn't even recognize her number. Evan, she said, her voice small and shaky, Miles is gone. Heart failure. 42 years old. No warning signs, no time to say goodbye. The funeral was quiet, small. Closed casket. He had a few old tech friends show up in hoodies and sunglasses, and they kept whispering to each other like they were still plotting some grand disruption. Tessie came with me, wore a black dress I didn't recognize, sleeveless, silk, expensive looking. I remember complimenting her and she just nodded, distracted. I chalked it up to the occasion. 3 weeks later, I was back at work, buried in meetings and feature reviews, when I got a call from a lawyer in Scottsdale. I figured it was about Miles' estate, maybe they needed a signature or something minor. What I wasn't prepared for was the actual news. Miles had left me $2.4 million in liquid assets and partial ownership of our first startup, CodeRoot Systems. Something I hadn't touched in over a decade. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear as the lawyer rattled off numbers and legal jargon like it was an ordinary Tuesday. I could barely process it. I didn't feel excited. I felt guilty, confused. Why me? When I told Tessie that night, she raised an eyebrow and said, well, looks like Miles had a soft spot for you after all. That was it. No follow-up questions, no wonder, no emotional reaction. Just poured herself a glass of Cabernet and went back to watching her cooking show. I stared at her for a minute, waiting for some kind of acknowledgement that this was a massive, life-changing moment, but none came. Just a vague smile like I'd told her I got a refund on an Amazon order. Still, I convinced myself it didn't matter. Maybe she was tired. Maybe I was overanalyzing. That was the beginning of the second-guessing, a habit I didn't realize I was about to become deeply acquainted with. The message came a week later. It was a Thursday night. I'd been in my home office going over some documentation for a new internal tool we were building when I decided to take a break and brush my teeth before bed. I left my phone on the bathroom counter, still connected to the Bluetooth speaker, quietly playing some jazz in the background. As I leaned down to rinse, the screen lit up. Unknown number. No name. No area code I recognized. The message said, still thinking about that moment at the *LL room 417. You looked amazing in that black dress. Still tasting that wine off your lips. I miss you already. There was a photo attached. Not of people. Just a hotel room, soft lighting, white linens, a half-empty wine bottle on the nightstand. 2 glasses. A single stiletto heel kicked over on the carpet. The curtains slightly opened to reveal the downtown skyline. I stood there frozen. My brain couldn't process it all at once. First instinct, scam. Some weird *stingbot. But it was too specific. Too personal. It mentioned the *LL, a historic hotel right in the heart of Austin. A place Tessie and I had talked about staying at but never did. It mentioned a black dress, maybe a coincidence, maybe not. The message wasn't written like a bot either. It was romantic, nostalgic, visceral. I stared at the photo again. No faces. But something in it felt familiar. The layout. The aesthetic. Something about it gave me a strange, hollow feeling in my chest. I walked into the living room where Tessie was sitting, curled up in a blanket, glass of wine in hand, flipping through Zillow listings like she always did when she was bored. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice casual, I just got a weird message. Might be one of those scam things, but it's... I don't know. Just strange. She looked up, mildly annoyed at being interrupted. I handed her the phone. She read the message and tilted her head. Her eyes flicked over the text, then the photo. No visible change in expression. She took another sip of wine, handed the phone back, and said, yeah, that's spam. I get stuff like that all the time. Some bot scraping phone numbers. Probably meant for someone else. I waited, expecting more. An "oh my god, that's creepy." Or even a laugh. Something. But she just shrugged. "You don't seem surprised," I said. She scoffed. "Because I'm not. You think I haven't seen stuff like that before?" "Honestly, Evan, you need to stop letting your imagination run wild. It's a marketing scam. They send thousands of those to random numbers hoping someone replies." Then she pivoted, and this part stuck with me more than anything. She leaned back, narrowed her eyes slightly, and said, "Why are you being so weird about this? Do you think I sent it?" "What?" "No. Of course not." "Then what?" she asked. "You think someone's trying to mess with us? Or are you just, what? Suspicious all of a sudden?" I felt like I'd been put on trial. I laughed awkwardly. "I don't know. Just caught me off guard, that's all." She nodded slowly and went back to her tablet. "Then don't let it get to you. Seriously, you stress too much." But I didn't go back to work. I didn't brush the thought away. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the message, turning it over and over in my mind. Something about her reaction, it wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was too clean, too quick, like a line rehearsed in front of a mirror. I should have let it go. But I couldn't. And in that moment, even if I didn't know it yet, the foundation under my life, the one I thought was made of steel, had started to crack. After that night, something inside me shifted. I didn't say anything out loud, didn't make accusations or throw around ultimatums. I just started noticing. And when you start noticing, it's hard to stop. The first thing I picked up on was Thursday nights. Tessie started staying out later than usual. At first it was just an hour or two past her normal return from work, and she had a reason every time. "Meeting with the PR team," she'd say. "The department's changing strategy." Lots of late-night prep. The first time she said it, I didn't question it. The second time, I nodded but made a mental note. The third time, I realized something important. Tessie doesn't work in PR. Never has. Her title is Operations Manager, and her company's PR division is headquartered in Chicago. She works out of the Austin branch, mostly with logistics and scheduling. So why the sudden PR meetings? I didn't ask, not directly. I started watching. I began jotting things down in my phone. What she wore. When she left. When she came home. What excuses she gave. I wasn't trying to be paranoid, I was trying to be sure. Then came the credit card bill. I check our finances once a month. Not obsessively, just enough to stay on top of it. We share one joint credit card for groceries, utilities, and big-ticket items. She has her own for personal expenses, and so do I. But the joint account had new charges I didn't recognize, a $328 charge from a luxury spot in Westlake, another from a wine bar downtown, a 2-day car rental for a BMW convertible in the middle of the workweek. None of these lined up with errands or work-related use. I texted her about it once, just a simple, "Hey, did you take out a BMW rental on Tuesday?" She replied a few minutes later. "Yeah. Work thing. Client visit. Everyone was pitching in and I just used our cards since it was fastest. We'll Venmo back." She never did. That same day, she came home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. It wasn't the usual vanilla or the citrusy stuff she wore when we went out. This one was sharp, floral, expensive. Like something you'd wear on a first date. I didn't ask. I just sat on the couch, pretending to scroll through the news while she changed upstairs. The distance between us started growing in ways I couldn't quantify, just felt. Her phone, once left face up on the counter, was now always in her pocket or purse. When she texted, she'd tilt the screen away. I stopped hearing the little laugh she used to give when replying to her sister. Now it was just silence, the occasional smirk, and always an abrupt lock screen the second I walked into the room. One morning, she left for work early. Said she had to pick up printed materials for a marketing rollout. I nodded. She kissed my cheek and left in a blur of perfume and heels. About 20 minutes later, I went to grab something from the laundry room and found a receipt in the dryer lint trap. Not hers, mine. From her coat. A receipt from the Drisk*LL Hotel dated 2 days earlier. 2 cocktails. A room service order. And the words Room 417 printed in the top right corner. Room 417. I held the slip between my fingers and sat down at the edge of the washing machine. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just sat there still, like someone had punched me in the throat. I remember my thumb brushing over the ink as if I could rub the truth away. That night, I mentioned nothing. She acted normal. Asked what I wanted for dinner. Told me a funny story about someone in her office ordering 60 sandwiches instead of 6. I nodded. Laughed in the right spots. The whole time I was staring at her and thinking, who the hell are you right now? Later, while she was in the shower, I checked the hamper. The black dress from the funeral was balled up and tucked under a pile of jeans and pajamas. I hadn't seen it in weeks. It smelled faintly like wine and perfume. And something else, something I couldn't identify but felt familiar. Hotel room air. That blend of cleaning agents, old carpet, and recirculated heat. It all started clicking. Not like a sudden crash, but like slow dominoes finally toppling after weeks of standing still. She had new lingerie too. I noticed it in the drawer, delicate lace, satin ribbons, expensive tags. Nothing I'd ever seen her wear, not even on anniversaries. When I asked her about it one afternoon, she smiled, shrugged, and said, "Just treating myself. You know how those Instagram ads get me." Then she turned the conversation to my wardrobe, claiming I should upgrade my button-downs. That's what she did best, redirect. I became painfully aware of how often she touched her phone when we were together. In the kitchen. Watching a movie. Brushing her teeth. Always texting, always with a smile, but never laughing anymore. Never looking at me. One Thursday night, I followed her. Not far, just into the city. She said she had a late dinner with colleagues. I waited 10 minutes, then got in my truck and drove to the address she'd left on the kitchen note, Valentina's. Client mixer. Don't wait up. She wasn't there. I waited in the parking lot for 45 minutes. Checked every table inside. The waitress told me the company Tessie worked for hadn't booked the patio that night and the name wasn't on any reservation lists. I left without saying anything. Drove around aimlessly for over an hour. When I got home, she was already there. Fresh makeup. New earrings. Hair still curled. She was drinking tea like nothing had happened. "Didn't think you'd be home before me," she said. "Mixer got canceled. I just came back early." I didn't respond. Just nodded, went upstairs, and stared at the ceiling in the dark for hours. Every part of me wanted to confront her. To throw the receipt down on the table, demand answers, scream, cry, fall apart. But another part of me, the part that had lived with her for over a decade, knew better. She would deny it. She would twist it. She would gaslight me until I started questioning the very things I had seen with my own eyes. I wasn't ready to play that game. So instead, I stayed quiet. And I listened. And I watched. The lies weren't even subtle anymore. She once told me she was having dinner with Janine and Laurel from accounting. 2 women I'd met before. I sent Janine a polite message the next day asking how dinner went. She responded, "Dinner? I was home with my kids. Haven't seen Tessie in weeks." I deleted the message and sat in the parking lot at work, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't imagining things. This was real. And whoever was on the other side of that text message, whoever was waiting in room 417, wasn't some marketing bot. They were real too. By early February, I was living in my own house like a guest who'd overstayed his welcome. Tessie had built herself a new rhythm. Late Thursday nights, spontaneous work obligations, vague phone calls from coworkers that always required a trip outside or a locked bathroom door. She was rarely present anymore. Not really. She still smiled. She still kissed my cheek in the morning. She still asked about my day. But everything about her was carefully composed, filtered like she was afraid to say the wrong line and shatter whatever script she was following. And I was done pretending not to notice. The receipts, the lies, the subtle deflections, they were puzzle pieces. I needed the final image. Not to accuse her, not yet. But to see the whole picture myself. I wasn't going to confront her with maybes. I needed clarity. So I made a decision I never imagined I'd make. I installed a camera in my office. Not some covert spy pen or cinematic hacker setup. Just a small black motion-activated cam wedged into the bookshelf behind some old binders. It pointed toward my desk and office chair, nothing more. My gut had been whispering something for weeks, that my office, the one room Tessie never had interest in, had started showing signs of life while I was away. A coffee mug out of place. The faint smell of perfume that clung to the seat cushion even though I always kept the door shut. Once, my wireless mouse was upside down when I came home as if someone had picked it up and set it back awkwardly. Small things. Easy to ignore. Easy to explain. But not when you're already seeing shadows. I set up the camera with remote access through my phone. It activated only when someone entered the room. The feed would save to a private cloud account I registered under a dummy name. I didn't expect anything to happen right away. Maybe not ever. But it happened. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon, I told Tessie I'd be home late, some fake happy hour with the QA team. She smiled and said, "Have fun. Don't drink too much." I watched her in the mirror while I tied my shoes. She looked calm. Effortlessly so. I left at 5:30 p.m., drove 5 blocks, then parked behind a Shell station and waited. At 6:12 p.m. I got a notification. Motion detected, office camera. My heart didn't race. It thudded. I pulled up the feed, hands slightly trembling. The image loaded slowly, the signal bouncing off cell towers like it was making me wait on purpose. There she was. Tessie. In my office. Wearing the same beige coat she'd had on when I left. Hair tied up loosely like she didn't care anymore. And she wasn't alone. Josh was with her. Josh. It took my brain a few seconds to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Josh, my college roommate. My wedding party best man. The guy I hadn't seen much of since the holidays, but who always texted every now and then to grab a beer or catch up soon. He was there. In my house. Standing next to my wife like it was the most natural thing in the world. He set something down on my desk. A takeaway bag. Thai food, maybe? Tessie leaned on the edge of the desk, casually sipping from a drink as he talked. Then he stepped closer, too close. He reached out and touched her hand. She didn't flinch. She smiled. Then he leaned down and kissed her. Soft. Familiar. Her hand reached up and touched his neck the way she used to with me when we were still in love, before the distance, before all the silence swallowed our marriage whole. I felt like I'd been dropped into ice water. I couldn't breathe. They talked for a while after that, laughing like old lovers. Tessie pointed to something on my desk, one of my old notebooks, and they laughed harder. I watched her throw her head back, eyes shining, cheeks pink. A version of her I hadn't seen in years. A version of her I thought only I knew how to bring out. Then, after about 15 minutes, they left together. The camera caught the back of Josh's hand resting lightly on the small of her back as they exited. The door shut. Silence. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just sat in the car, replaying the footage over and over, each time hoping I'd misunderstood. Hoping I'd missed something obvious. But I hadn't. It was all there. It wasn't just that they were having an affair. It was the way they moved. The comfort. The routine. This wasn't new. Later that night, Tessie came home at 9:47 p.m. She was freshly showered, hair damp, wearing one of my old t-shirts like she always used after long days. She kissed my forehead. How was happy hour? Fine, I said. You? Pretty quiet. Caught up on some shows. Did laundry. Nothing exciting. That was the moment it really broke inside me. Not the video. Not the kiss. The lie. The ease in her voice. The confidence. She was staring into my face, telling me nothing happened while knowing full well she had been in my office with Josh, my friend. In her house. Sitting on my desk. Kissing. I barely spoke for the rest of the evening. I told her I had a headache. She offered me Advil. Said she'd rub my shoulders if I wanted. I declined. She didn't push. I watched her walk upstairs and brush her teeth in the mirror like nothing had changed. And maybe for her, nothing had. But for me, everything had. The next morning, I called out of work. Told them I needed a day for personal reasons. They didn't press. I sat at the kitchen table, the video playing on loop in my mind. I tried to imagine how far back this went. When it started. Why it started. What I'd missed. I opened my email and searched Josh, found 2 recent threads. One was an RSVP to a holiday party. The other? A short back and forth about helping Tessie with the garage remodel. From 2 months ago. That was the excuse she gave when I came home to new power tools and half-assembled shelves I never asked for. Josh knows more about this stuff, she said. He was just helping out. I'd bought her story. Why wouldn't I? He was my friend. She was my wife. Now that trust felt radioactive. I didn't delete the footage. I downloaded it. Backed it up. Saved it to a flash drive. Then another. I printed stills. Timestamps. I even emailed myself a copy labeled as a software bug report just in case. Because I knew now this wasn't a one-off. And this wasn't going to be easy. Tessie had built an alternate life under the same roof. Behind the same smiles. Right beside my own routines. And Josh, he wasn't just a side player. He was embedded in our story. He'd been at our wedding, toasted our anniversary, sat at my kitchen table laughing at my bad jokes. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategic, deliberate, personal. And if I was going to respond, I wasn't going to scream or beg or collapse. No, I was going to be methodical, just like them. Once the shock wore off, something colder settled in. Clarity. I didn't confront Tessie. I didn't call Josh. There was no shouting, no late-night demand for explanations. I stayed quiet. I smiled when she smiled. I nodded when she spoke. And inside, I was cataloging everything. That's the thing about betrayal. Once it finds you, it changes the way you see the world. Every sentence becomes suspicious. Every excuse holds weight. Every second of eye contact feels like a lie that forgot its mask. So I decided to do what I was trained to do. Analyze, strategize, and build a system that wouldn't fail. I started with the obvious. Private investigator. Her name was Chloe Ferris, recommended by a lawyer friend I trusted from work. She was ex-military intelligence, late 30s, sharp as glass and twice as hard. I met her in a small cafe off Burnett Road, handed her a manila envelope containing everything I had, timestamps, **TS, receipts, even a map I'd started building with location guesses based on Tessie's lies. Chloe didn't flinch. After skimming the folder for 10 minutes, she looked up and asked, "You want confirmation, or you want leverage?" "Both," I said. "And I want to know how deep this goes." She nodded. "Give me 3 weeks." Took less than 2. By the 9th day, Chloe had followed Tessie to a mid-range hotel near the Domain twice. She sent me discreet photos. Tessie entering with Josh, sometimes dressed casually, sometimes like she was heading to a gala. Once, they arrived separately, other times in the same car. She sent me video clips of them in the lobby, walking hand in hand like any normal couple. Smiling. Comfortable. She even captured Josh kissing her on the forehead as they waited for their elevator. I saved everything. I started sleeping less, eating less. My appetite was gone, replaced by adrenaline and caffeine. Every night, Tessie would crawl into bed beside me like nothing was happening. Sometimes, she'd fall asleep with her head on my chest. Sometimes, she'd whisper, "You okay? You seem distant lately." "I'm just tired," I'd say. That was the truth. I was exhausted from carrying the weight of a world she'd built on top of mine. Then Chloe called with something I didn't expect. "You should know," she said one evening. "Josh has a pattern." "A pattern?" "Yeah, he's done this before. Multiple times. 3 women, 2 confirmed relationships. Same setup, married or partnered women, usually with access to wealth. He moves in, gets close, builds trust. The financial angle varies. Sometimes it's investments. Sometimes he helps with legal paperwork or business restructuring. One woman, divorced real estate agent, transferred him partial access to a brokerage account. Said she thought it would help them build a future together. He drained it. Never prosecuted. I stared at the phone, blood draining from my face. "So this isn't just an affair?" "No," Chloe said. "This guy plays long games. You're not the first. But if you move right, you can be the last." She gave me contact info for 2 other men who had gone through similar experiences. One in Denver, one in Portland. I reached out carefully, identifying myself as someone who had found a common thread. They both responded within hours. Their stories matched, eerily so. One man's ex-wife had been swindled into giving Josh control over their joint LLC for a wellness startup. Another said Josh encouraged his wife to invest in a friend's off-market crypto project, which evaporated 2 weeks later. Both women were emotionally manipulated into thinking Josh was helping them secure a future apart from their current lives. And now it was my wife's turn. I asked Chloe to dig deeper into our financials. She linked me up with a forensic accountant, Daniel Kim, soft-spoken but precise. I handed him access to our joint accounts, and within 4 days, he had flagged 9 transactions that seemed off. Tessie had opened a small investment account in her name 3 months prior and started slowly funneling joint funds through consulting reimbursements and equipment costs. The transfers were subtle, legal even, but shady. One deposit stood out, $7, $400 labeled as Mentor Services, J. T. Whitmore LLC. That's Josh's real name, Joshua Trent Whitmore. I stared at the entry on the printed sheet Daniel handed me and had to laugh. Mentor Services. The sheer audacity. I thanked Daniel, scanned everything, and filed it under a secure Google Drive labeled Fallout. That night, Tessie asked if I wanted to take a weekend trip to Fredericksburg. Said we'd been out of sync lately. said she wanted to reconnect. I smiled. Sure, I said. Let's get away. We never took that trip. Because while she was planning a romantic weekend with her backup plan, I was putting together a full case. By week 3, I had assembled a team. Chloe on surveillance, Daniel on finance, 2 other betrayed husbands on standby with statements, and a lawyer, Cameron Wilder, ready to file at a moment's notice. Cam specialized in complex divorces and fraud-related asset protection. The first time I met him, he asked only one question. Do you want to burn it down quietly or publicly? I didn't answer right away. I was still figuring that part out. Then Cam leaned forward. Look, I've seen this play before. If you want to keep your dignity and your assets, you need to hit first. You don't need to be vindictive. Just prepared. I'm already past the shock, I told him. Now I just want to end it clean and make sure she walks away with nothing she didn't earn. He smiled. Then we'll make it surgical. Cam helped me draft a postnup, retroactive and airtight. Tessie had signed an old prenup when we first got married, but it didn't cover inheritances or business interests. Cam advised using her current financial misrepresentations to establish grounds for fraud. That, combined with the emotional and legal documentation we had on Josh, would be enough to protect my family stake in the startup Miles left me. Cam also recommended filing a separate civil complaint against Josh, intentional interference with marital relations and fraud by deception. It wouldn't be a criminal charge, but it would lock Josh into a public court record. The same way he'd vanished from other women's lives, we'd make sure his name couldn't disappear this time. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. And most of all, I wanted Tessie to look in the mirror and realize the cost of her game. That Friday, she left for one of her PR meetings at 5:05 p.m. By 5:17, I had the email sent. The one with all the documentation, photos, bank transfers, text records, hotel receipts, time-stamped footage. It went to her personal email, her work account, and her phone. The subject line read, "We need to talk. Start here." By 6:09, I got a single reply. "Evan, please, let's not do this over email. Can we talk in person? Please." But I didn't respond, because by then, I was already meeting Cam in his office, signing the first round of papers. Everything in motion, and I was just getting started. The moment she walked through the front door, she knew. She didn't even call out for me, just stood there, frozen, clutching her purse like it might shield her from what was coming. I watched from the hallway, silent, letting her take in the neatly stacked folders on the coffee table. One labeled with her name, one with mine, one with Josh's. Her eyes landed on the open laptop, the paused video from the office camera still on screen. She didn't move toward it. Instead, she looked up at me slowly, like a kid waiting to be scolded. "Evan," she said, voice soft, like she was approaching a skittish animal. "Can we please talk about this?" I didn't speak. I waited. "I know what it looks like," she continued, "and I know I messed up. I was going to end it. I was going to tell you." "Were you?" I finally asked. "Yes," she nodded quickly. "I swear. I've been confused, and no, don't insult both of us by pretending this is new." I kept my tone even. "It wasn't a mistake, Tessie. It was a choice, over and over again. And now it's my turn to choose." Her face crumpled, but I didn't flinch. I didn't care about tears anymore. Not after watching her laugh in my office. Not after reading receipts showing she used our money to finance her affair. She tried stepping forward, but I raised my hand. "You need to sit down." To my surprise, she obeyed. Lowered herself to the edge of the couch like she was afraid the wrong move might collapse the room. "I want you to listen," I said. "I've already filed. You'll be served within 48 hours. I've compiled financial records, surveillance footage, and testimony. I have a legal team ready, and I have more than enough to prove both emotional and financial misconduct." "Wait, what?" She blinked, confused. "You hired people to follow me?" "No," I said calmly. "I hired people to protect myself from you." She went quiet. "The prenup holds, and now so does the evidence. My inheritance is off limits. Any claim to family assets gone. The house? Mine. You contributed to none of it. The cars? I'm keeping the Tacoma. You can take your lease. The Roth account is yours. Everything else? Frozen until we finish this. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. I kept going. There's also a civil case being drafted against Josh. Intentional interference. Fraud. He'll be subpoenaed. He won't be able to duck out of this one like he did in Denver or Portland. Her eyes snapped to mine. You talked to them? I did, I said. Turns out your boyfriend's got a little resume of relational manipulation. But I'm guessing you already knew that. You just thought I wouldn't figure it out. You're twisting this, she said suddenly, voice cracking. This isn't just some long con. Josh didn't use me. I raised my eyebrow. Then why the sudden business accounts? Why the untraceable consulting payments? Why lie about your job, about the hotel, about everything? She started, then stopped. Her voice lowered. I was unhappy. I said nothing. I didn't plan for this to happen, she whispered. You changed. You got distant after Miles died. All you talked about was work and money, and I felt like a ghost in our own home. I let the silence stretch. Then, so you decided to erase me instead. No, she said, suddenly defensive. I tried to talk to you, Evan. You shut down. I didn't want to cheat. Josh made me feel alive again. I nodded slowly. So the fix was to burn everything down. Her voice dropped again. I didn't think it would go this far. You never do, I said. We sat there for a while. She cried. I didn't. Eventually, I stood up and placed a copy of the settlement proposal in front of her. This is what I'm offering. Clean exit. You waive any claim to the startup, the house, the estate. You keep your car, your personal savings, and your 401k. No alimony. No drawn-out fight. She blinked at the packet like it was written in another language. You really already did all this? I had to. Because you already left, just not physically. For a moment, I thought she might explode. But she didn't. She deflated. Like a balloon that realized it had no helium left. She signed the preliminary agreement 3 days later. Kim expedited the filing. By week's end, her lawyer called mine to negotiate, but there wasn't much to haggle. With the documentation we had, Tessie would have been destroyed in court. Public exposure. Adultery. Financial manipulation. Every judge in the district would see her name attached to a fraud. Instead, she settled. Josh, on the other hand, was less cooperative. He ignored the first subpoena. Then the second. Finally, Kim motioned for a court order. Josh showed up late to the hearing wearing sunglasses and a smirk. That vanished quickly once Chloe's dossier was submitted into the record. Former employers, past civil complaints, bank traces, forged LLC documents, it all came out. He tried playing it cool. Claimed he was just helping Tessie navigate emotional turmoil. Claimed it was consensual and private. Cam didn't even bother objecting. He let the evidence do the talking. Josh was hit with a restraining order, a formal fraud complaint, and a separate suit from one of the other husbands who flew in for testimony. The judge reviewed the evidence and ruled that Tessie's entitlement to any future earnings connected to my inheritance or the company Miles left me was null. Marital conduct, they called it. Premeditated deception. She got nothing. No house. No car. No slice of my salary. She moved into a studio apartment on the edge of the city and started driving for rideshare part-time while waiting for a new office job to materialize. Josh vanished. Again. Maybe to Vegas. Maybe to Florida. Doesn't matter. What mattered was that this time he didn't get away without scars. After the proceedings, Tessie sent me one message. I understand why you did what you did. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope one day you believe I loved you even if I didn't show it the right way. I never replied. What do you say to someone who took a match to your life, then asks for closure? I didn't need closure. I needed space. And I finally had it. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like mine again. No secrets. No second phone lighting up under a pillow. No lingering perfume from nights I wasn't part of. Just me, Bruno, and the low hum of the dishwasher on a Tuesday night. I wasn't healed yet. But I wasn't bleeding anymore either. And that was enough for now. After the dust settled, I didn't hide. I didn't vanish. I built something. I called it Reclaim. It started as a private forum, just a handful of men who'd gone through what I had. Cheating. Gaslighting. Financial betrayal. It wasn't a pity circle. It was a place to breathe again. A place to tell the truth. Within 3 months, the group grew. Lawyers. Therapists. Coaches. Some just wanted to listen. Others needed to scream. Every story felt like a version of mine. Then, one afternoon, a woman walked into my office with a quiet demeanor and a check in hand. It was a donation, in memory of her brother who'd taken his life after his wife left him bankrupt and broken. She stayed. She didn't cry. She just talked. That's how we began. 5 years later, Reclaim became a national network. We pushed for legislative reform, lobbied for better spousal fraud protections, funded recovery programs. At a conference in Chicago, I told my story to a packed auditorium. I wasn't bitter. I was grounded. Standing beside me was the woman who once came to grieve her brother. She was now my wife. As I looked at the crowd, men holding their stories like scars turned armor, I realized something. Miles didn't just leave me money. He gave me a second life. One rooted not in betrayal, but in clarity. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid to live it.